The morning sun cast long shadows across the golden wheat fields of Terra Nova as Marcus Vale walked the dirt path between crops. His boots made soft sounds on the packed earth, and he could hear the distant hum of farming machines working in the far fields. The air smelled of fresh grain and morning dew. This was how every day started for the past 30 years, since he became governor of the colony. Terra Nova had been peaceful for so long that most people forgot if there was ever anything to be afraid of. The last time anyone had drawn a weapon, in anger, was 53 years ago. And that was just old Pete Morgan getting too drunk and waving his hunting rifle around. The peacekeepers had talked him down with coffee and kind words. Marcus stopped at the edge of Alina Webb's research fields. She was already there, kneeling between rows of strange purple plants that seemed to glow in the early light. Alina had been working on these new crops for months, trying to create something that could grow on the dead worlds out past the rim. "Morning, Alina," Marcus called out. "How are your miracle plants doing?" Alina looked up and smiled. Her hands were dirty with soil, and there were leaves in her gray hair. "Better than I hoped, Marcus. These little ones can pull nutrients from almost anything. Sand, rock, dust, even old metal scraps. If this works, we could help feed the struggling colonies on Kepler 7 and New Haven." Marcus nodded. This was typical of Alina and typical of Terra Nova. When they heard about worlds where people were hungry, their first thought was always how to help. The colony had sent seed supplies, farming equipment, and technical knowledge to dozens of worlds over. The years, they never asked for anything in return. "Council meeting is at noon," Marcus reminded her. "We're discussing the new water treatment plant for the southern districts." "I'll be there," Alina said, turning back to her plants. "Just want to check the growth rates one more time." Marcus continued his walk toward the town center. Terra Nova's main settlement looked more like a large farming community than the capital of a world. The buildings were low and made of local stone and wood. Gardens grew between houses, and children played in the streets without fear. The most impressive structure was the community center, where they held meetings and celebrations. As Marcus reached the town square, he saw a small crowd gathered around something unusual. People were pointing up at the sky and talking in excited voices. Marcus followed their gaze and saw a ship descending through the morning clouds. It was unlike any vessel he had ever seen, with smooth metal surfaces and strange markings along its hull. The ship landed gently in the open field, just outside town. A ramp extended from its side, and a figure emerged. The being was tall and covered in what looked like natural armor plating. Its skin was dark gray with blue markings, and it walked on two legs like a human, but moved with the fluid grace of a predator. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. But he kept his expression calm. As governor, it was his job to handle first contact situations, though they had never actually had one before. He walked toward the ship with steady steps, his hands visible and empty. The alien being stopped a few meters away and made a gesture that might have been a greeting. When it spoke, its voice was deep and resonant. But the words came through clearly thanks to the universal translator built into its armor. "I am Ambassador Thane of the Kaldan Empire," the being said. "I come seeking the leaders of this world." "Marcus Vale, governor of Terra Nova," Marcus replied. "Welcome to our world, Ambassador Thane. We're honored by your visit." Thane's head tilted slightly, as if Marcus's response surprised him. "You show no fear. This is unusual. Should we be afraid?" Marcus asked simply. "Most species show caution when meeting the Kaldan for the first time. We are known as warriors throughout this sector of the galaxy." Marcus smiled. "We've found that most conflicts can be avoided through honest conversation and mutual respect. Would you like to join us for lunch? Our community center has a good kitchen, and our cook makes excellent bread." Thane stared at Marcus for a long moment. "You invite a stranger from the stars to share your food without knowing his intentions?" "Everyone needs to eat," Marcus said. "And if you meant us harm, you probably wouldn't have landed in the middle of town and introduced yourself politely." By now, more townspeople had gathered around, but they kept a respectful distance. Marcus noticed that Alina had arrived, still wiping soil from her hands. Dr. Tom Reed. The colony's chief engineer was there too, along with Lisa Brooke, who ran the transport services between Terra Nova and the orbital stations. Thane looked around. At the assembled humans, "Your people are curious but not aggressive. They watch but do not threaten. That's just our way," Marcus said. "We believe in understanding before judging." The Caldan ambassador accepted the invitation to lunch, and soon he was sitting in the community center surrounded by a dozen of Terra Nova's leaders. The cook, an elderly woman named Mary, brought out fresh bread, vegetable soup, and roasted meat from the local livestock. As they ate, Thane explained that he was part of a diplomatic mission to catalog the various species and civilizations in this region of space. The Caldan Empire was expanding its knowledge of potential allies and threats. "We have heard of your world," Thane said. "You are known as mediators and healers. Several worlds have mentioned that Terra Nova humans helped them resolve conflicts or provided aid during difficult times." Alina leaned forward. "We believe that a galaxy where everyone helps each other is better than one where everyone fights." Thane's expression was unreadable. "A noble philosophy, but the galaxy is not always so kind. There are forces out there that cannot be reasoned with, species that view your kindness as weakness to be exploited." Dr. Reed frowned. "Us, Ambassador?" "No," Thane said quickly. "I am warning you. The Caldan Empire has survived for thousands of years because we understand that strength is sometimes the only language that hostile forces understand. You have built something beautiful here, but beauty alone will not protect it from those who would destroy it." Marcus set down his spoon. "What kind of threats are you talking about?" Thane was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "There are rumors from the Outer Rim, ships disappearing, entire colonies going silent. Something is moving through that region of space, consuming everything in its path. It may be nothing, but if it is real, it will eventually reach worlds." "Like yours?" The room fell silent. Lisa Brooke was the first to speak. "What do you suggest we do?" "Prepare," Thane said simply. "Build defenses. Form alliances with stronger species. Learn to fight before you are forced to." Elena shook her head. "Fighting creates more fighting. If there really is a threat out there, maybe we should try to understand it first. Find out what it wants. See? If we can find a peaceful solution." Thane looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Dr. Webb, some things in this galaxy cannot be negotiated with. Some forces exist only to destroy. I hope you never have to learn this lesson, but I fear you will." The Caldan ambassador finished his meal and prepared to leave. As he walked back to his ship, he turned to Marcus one final time. "Your people have good hearts," Thane said, "but the galaxy is vast and full of darkness. I hope your light is strong, enough to survive what is coming." The ship lifted off silently, leaving the people of Terra Nova standing in their peaceful fields, wondering if their quiet world was about to change forever. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Thane's visit, and life on Terra Nova had returned to its peaceful rhythm. The harvest season was in full swing, and golden grain swayed in the afternoon breeze across endless fields. Marcus Vale stood on the observation deck of the community center, watching the farming machines move through the crops like gentle giants. Alina Webb had successfully grown her new plants and was preparing the first shipment of seeds to the struggling colonies. Tom Reed was busy designing a new water purification system that could work on worlds with contaminated ground supplies. Everything seemed normal and hopeful. The first sign of trouble came from Lisa. Brooke's transport ship returning from the orbital supply station. She landed her vessel with unusual haste and ran toward the community center without even powering down her engines properly. "Marcus," she called out as she burst through the doors. "We need to talk now." Marcus found her in the communication room, frantically adjusting the long-range scanner displays. Her face was pale, and her hand shook slightly as she worked the controls. "What's wrong, Lisa?" Marcus asked. "The Henderson colony," she said. Without looking up from the screens, "They've gone completely silent. No response to any communications for 3 days." Marcus frowned. Henderson colony was only 2 systems away, a small mining operation with about 5,000 people. They were scheduled to receive a supply run next week. Equipment failure, Marcus suggested. Maybe their communication array went down. Lisa shook her head and pointed to the display. Look at this. It's running a routine scan when I picked up these readings from the Henderson system. The screen showed energy signatures that Marcus had never seen before. Strange patterns of radiation and electromagnetic disturbance spread across the entire star system like a cloud of destruction. What could cause readings like that? Asked, I don't know, Lisa admitted. But there's something else. Tom, come look at this. Tom Reed had arrived and was studying the display with growing concern. As the colony's chief engineer, he understood technology better than anyone else on Terra Nova. These energy patterns, Tom said slowly, they're not natural. Someone or something used massive amounts of power to do this. The entire system looks like it's been stripped clean. Before anyone could respond, the communication system crackled to life. A desperate voice filled the room, speaking in the common galactic language with heavy static interference. This is Captain Ross of the merchant vessel Bright Star. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Unknown ships have destroyed our escort and are closing in on our position. We're not responding to any communication attempts. Just keep coming. If anyone receives this message, warn the colonies. These things, they don't want to talk. They don't want anything except to destroy everything in their path. The transmission cut to static, then silence. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had hoped that Thane's warnings were just the paranoid concerns of a warrior species, but now it seemed the Kaldan ambassador had been right about the danger. How far away was that transmission from? Marcus asked. Lisa checked her equipment. The Bright Star was in the Kepler system. That's only one jump away from us. Elena Webb arrived at that moment, having heard the commotion. She listened as Lisa replayed the transmission, her face growing more serious with each word. We need to contact the other colonies, Elena said. Warn them about what's happening. Marcus nodded and activated the colony's emergency communication network. For the next hour, they sent warnings to every world within 50 light-years. Most colonies responded quickly. But several systems that should have answered remained silent. The situation became clearer over the next few days. As refugee ships began arriving at Terra Nova, the survivors all told the same terrifying story. Ships had appeared without warning, completely black vessels that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. They attacked immediately, without any attempt at communication. They didn't seem interested in capturing anything or taking prisoners. They simply destroyed everything they encountered, then moved on to the next target. Dr. Reed studied the few scanner recordings that the refugees had managed to save. The enemy ships moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. Their weapons were unlike anything in the galactic databases, seeming to break down matter at the molecular level. They're called the Vorth, explained Captain Mills, the commander of a refugee transport that had escaped from the Outer Rim. Nobody knows where they came from, but they've been moving through the galaxy for months now. Every world they touch becomes a dead rock. They strip away the atmosphere, break down all organic matter, leave nothing behind. Marcus gathered the colony's leadership in the community center that evening. The usual cheerful atmosphere was replaced by grim faces and worried conversations. We have two choices, Marcus said to the assembled group. We can evacuate Terra Nova and hope to find safety somewhere else, or we can stay and try to defend our world. Where would we go? Asked Mary the cook, who had served Ambassador Thane months earlier. If these Vorth creatures are destroying entire systems, running might just delay the inevitable. Alina stood up from her seat near the back of the room. Maybe we should try to contact them. Every species has needs, wants, goals. If we can understand what they're looking for, we might be able to find a peaceful solution. Several people nodded at this suggestion, but Tom Reed looked doubtful. From what the refugees described, these things don't act like any intelligent species we know about. They move like a swarm, attacking everything without discrimination. Lisa Brooke had been quiet during most of the discussion, but now she spoke up. There might be a third option. The old defense systems. The room fell silent. Everyone knew about the defense systems that had been installed when Terra Nova was first colonized, but they had never been activated. They were considered relics from a more violent time in human history. Those systems were designed for wars between human colonies, Marcus said. I'm not sure they would be effective against alien technology. Maybe not, Tom admitted. But they might buy us time to figure out something better. And there are protocols in the computer banks, military strategies, and defensive plans that our ancestors developed. We've never needed them, but they're there. Marcus looked around the room at the faces of his friends and neighbors. These were people who had spent their entire lives growing crops, raising children, and helping others. The idea of turning them into warriors seemed impossible. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, he said finally. But we should prepare for the worst while working for the best. 3 days later, the Vorth arrived at Terra Nova. Long-range scanners detected them at the edge of the system, a fleet of dark ships moving in perfect formation toward the colony world. Lisa Brooks' communications equipment picked up their electromagnetic signatures as they approached. The readings matched exactly what the refugees had described. Marcus stood in the communication center, watching the enemy fleet grow larger. On the display screens, Alina was beside him, still hoping for a peaceful solution. Tom Reed was in the basement of the community center, activating defense systems that had remained dormant for 3 centuries. This is Governor Marcus Vale of Terra Nova. Marcus broadcasts on all frequencies. We know you can hear this transmission. Want to talk? We want to understand what you need and find a way to coexist peacefully. There was no response from the approaching ships. They continued their steady advance toward Terra Nova, and their weapons began powering up for attack. The peaceful people of Terra Nova were about to learn what their ancestors had known, but they had forgotten. Sometimes survival requires more than good intentions. The first Vorth energy beam struck Terra Nova's outer orbital station at exactly 14 minutes past noon. Marcus Vale watched from the emergency command center as the structure that had served as their link to Space 42, 6 centuries simply, vanished in a flash of green light. No explosion, no debris floating in space. One moment it was there, and the next moment there was nothing but empty vacuum. Tom. AIDS. Hands flew over the ancient control panels as defense systems that had slept for 300 years suddenly roared to life. Hidden weapon platforms emerged from asteroids around the planet, and energy shields flickered into existence around the major population centers. Shields are holding, Tom reported, his voice tight with concentration. Ow. But I don't know for how long. These weapons are designed to break down matter at the atomic level. Alina Webb stood at another console, her peaceful demeanor replaced by focused determination. She had spent the last 3 days studying the biological samples that refugee ships had managed to collect from Vorth attack sites. What she found changed everything she thought she knew about the enemy. They're not really machines, Alina said, as another energy beam struck the planetary defenses. The Vorth ships are alive, or at least partly alive. They have organic components that respond to chemical signals. Marcus felt the ground shake as the community center's shield absorbed another attack. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the farming machines that had been working peacefully in the fields just hours before. Now, they were being converted into something else entirely. Lisa Brooke had taken charge of the conversion process, with the efficiency of someone who had spent years coordinating supply runs and logistics. The same organizational skills that made her excellent at managing cargo shipments now helped her turn farming equipment into weapons of war. The grain harvesters have been fitted with the old military targeting systems, Lisa reported. Irrigation pumps can now spray the chemical mixture that Alina developed. The transport vehicles are being armored with metal plating from the mining operations. What amazed Marcus most was how quickly and naturally his people adapted to warfare. The same community cooperation that had made Terra Nova a model of peaceful civilization now turned them into the most coordinated military force he had ever seen. Every person knew exactly what needed to be done, and they did it without hesitation or confusion. Dr. Peters, who had spent 40 years as the colony's veterinarian, was now mixing compounds that could disrupt the organic components of Vorth ships. His knowledge of animal biology translated perfectly to understanding the enemy's weaknesses. Young Ben Miller, who had been studying agricultural engineering, figured out how to modify the weather control satellites to create electromagnetic interference that confused Vorth navigation systems. Even Mary, the elderly cook, found her skills useful in the war effort. Her knowledge of preserving food and managing large-scale meal preparation helped organize supply lines for the defending forces. The transformation was so complete and so fast that it frightened Marcus almost as much as the enemy attack. In less than a day, his peaceful farming community had become something that looked more like a military base than a colony. The real shock came when the converted farming machines engaged the SVOF ground forces. Marcus watched through the tactical displays as his peoples improvised. Weapons not only held their own against the alien invaders but actually began pushing them back. The grain harvesters, now armed with energy weapons and guided by Tom Reed's targeting computers, moved through the Vorth landing parties like mechanical predators. They coordinated their attacks with a precision that seemed almost supernatural, anticipating enemy movements and responding to threats before they fully developed. Elena's chemical sprayers proved devastatingly effective against the organic components of Vorth technology. The alien ships began to malfunction and shut down when exposed to her biological weapons. Her decades of research into plant growth and soil chemistry had given her insights into biology that translated perfectly to warfare, but it was the human element that made the difference. Same people who had spent years working together to solve farming problems now applied that same cooperative spirit to military tactics. They shared information instantly, adapted to changing situations without missing a beat, and supported each other with the same dedication they had once shown to growing crops. Lisa Brooke found herself commanding a fleet of converted transport, ships that moved with the fluid coordination of a school of fish. The pilots, who had once carried grain and supplies between settlements, now executed complex battle maneuvers that would have impressed professional military commanders. "How are we doing this?" Lisa asked during a brief break in the fighting. 6 months ago, none of us had ever fired a weapon in anger. And now, we're out fighting a species that's been conquering the galaxy. Tom Reed looked up from his tactical displays, his face streaked with sweat and grime. "I think it's because we're not really fighting like soldiers. We're solving problems like farmers and engineers. The Vorth attack in predictable patterns because they're designed to overwhelm through brute force. But we keep adapting and changing our approach." Alina nodded in agreement. "They're like a plague or a swarm of insects. It's dangerous in large numbers, but vulnerable to the right kind of targeted response. We're treating this like pest control on a planetary scale." The battle continued for 3 days. Wave after wave of Vorth ships descended on Terra Nova, and each time, the defenders found new ways to counter their attacks. The humans learned from every engagement, proving their tactics and weapons with each encounter. By the end of the 3rd day, something unprecedented happened. The Vorth fleet, which had never been stopped by any world it attacked, began to retreat from Terra Nova. But the humans weren't content to simply drive them away. "They'll just go attack some other world," Marcus said as he watched the enemy. "Ships pulling back, someplace that can't defend itself the way we did?" Alina looked at the tactical displays showing the retreating Vorth forces. "Then we need to stop them permanently, find out where they're going next, and get there first." Lisa Brooke was already plotting courses and calculating jump coordinates. The Henderson colony survivors mentioned that the Vorth seemed to be moving in a pattern, following a specific route through the galaxy. If we can get ahead of them, we might be able to warn other worlds, or even intercept them. Tom Reed was studying the wreckage of Vorth ships that had been brought down during the fighting. "I'm learning things about their technology that I never would have imagined. These ships can be repaired and modified. We could build a fleet using their own weapons against them." Marcus realized that Terra Nova had reached a turning point. They could return to their peaceful ways and hope the Vorth never came back, or they could take the fight to the enemy and protect other worlds from the same fate. The decision was made when reports began coming in from across the galaxy. Other species had heard about Terra Nova's impossible victory over the Vorth, Desperate pleas for help arrived daily from worlds that lay in the path of the alien swarm. Within a week, the peaceful farmers of Terra Nova had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a military force that fought not for conquest or glory, but for the protection of others. They began to hunt the Vorth across the stars, and everywhere they went. They left behind worlds that were safe and free, but they also left behind something else. Growing fear among the galactic community that humanity had become too powerful, too effective, and too dangerous to be allowed to continue unchecked. 8 months after the first Vorth attack, Marcus Vale stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova flagship, watching as his fleet prepared to liberate another world from the alien swarm. The ship around him barely resembled the peaceful transport. Vessels that had once carried grain between settlements. Now, it was a fusion of human engineering and captured Vorth technology. More powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The rescued worlds had given the human fleet a new name, the Guardians. 17 different species had been saved from Vorth attacks, and each one spoke of the humans with a mixture of gratitude and growing unease. What had started as desperate requests for help was slowly turning into something else entirely. Alina Webb worked at her biological analysis station, studying samples from the latest Vorth variants. The enemy had begun adapting to human tactics, creating new ship designs and weapons to counter the Guardian fleet's advantages. But Alina adapted faster, developing new chemical compounds and biological weapons with frightening efficiency. "They're getting smarter," Alina reported to Marcus. "The Vorth are learning from each encounter, just like we are. But there's something else. I'm detecting communication signals between the swarms that suggest they're part of a larger network." Tom Reed looked up from his engineering displays. The peaceful farm engineer had become the fleet's chief technology officer, and his innovations were spreading throughout human space. Ships that could repair themselves during battle, weapons that learned and improved with each shot, defensive systems that anticipated attacks before they happened. "The latest modifications are working better than expected," Tom said.
"Our ships
"Are thinking faster than their crews can process information. The neural link technology is evolving beyond what we originally designed." Lisa Brooke commanded the Guardian Fleet's scout division from her position at the tactical station. She had saved more worlds than any other captain in the fleet, and her reputation was spreading throughout the galaxy. But along with the fame came whispers and worried conversations in the galactic councils. "Scout reports are coming in from the Nexus sector," Lisa announced. 12 different species have requested assistance, but there's something odd about these messages. They're not just asking for help with the Vorth anymore. Some of them are asking for protection from other threats too. Now Marcus frowned at this news. The Guardian fleet had been created specifically to fight the Vorth swarms, but their success had made them attractive to worlds facing any kind of danger. Pirates, hostile neighbors, internal conflicts, resource disputes, everyone seemed to think the humans could solve their problems. The communication console crackled to life, and Ambassador Thane's familiar voice filled the bridge. The Kaldan warrior had become an unofficial liaison between the Guardian fleet and the rest of the galaxy, but his recent messages had taken on a different tone. Fleet Commander Vale, Thane's voice carried a tension that hadn't been there in earlier communications. "I need to speak with you immediately. There have been developments that require urgent discussion." Marcus activated the private channel. "What's wrong, Thane? Have the Vorth changed their attack patterns again?" "This isn't about the Vorth," Thane replied. "It's about you. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. 17 species have formally requested that the Guardian fleet be contained and regulated. They're afraid of what humanity has become." The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Marcus had expected this day to come eventually, but it still felt like a blow to hear it confirmed. "Contained how?" Marcus asked. "Restricted to human space. Prohibited from operating in other species' territories without explicit permission. From the Galactic Council, your fleet would be limited in size and firepower. Or, in exchange, the galaxy would provide formal protection for human worlds and assist in the fight against the Vorth." Alina turned from her station, her face showing the same confusion that Marcus felt. "But we're helping them. We've saved millions of lives. Why would they want to stop us? Thane's voice carried a note of sadness. Because you're too good at it. In 8 months, you've become more powerful than species that have been building their militaries for thousands of years. Your technology advances faster than anyone can keep track of. Your tactical abilities are beyond what most civilizations achieve after centuries of warfare. Tom Reed spoke up from his engineering station. We never asked to become a military force. We're just trying to protect people from the Vorth. I know, Thane replied. But from the galaxy's perspective, you've proven that humans can transform. From peaceful farmers to unstoppable warriors in less than a year, that terrifies them more than the Vorth ever did. Lisa Brooke pulled up tactical displays showing the positions of various galactic fleets. How many ships are we talking about? Thane. 16 different species have committed forces to the containment effort. The Kalden Empire, the Terran Federation, the Nexus Council, even some of the worlds you've saved. We're calling it a protective measure, but everyone knows it's really about limiting human expansion. Marcus felt a familiar weight settling. On his shoulders, the same burden he had carried as a peaceful governor was now multiplied 1,000-fold as a fleet commander. Every decision he made affected not just Terra Nova, but the entire galaxy. Where are these fleets positioned? Marcus asked. Thane transmitted coordinates that showed enemy forces converging on the edges of human space from multiple directions. It was a carefully planned operation designed to surround and isolate the Guardian fleet. They're not planning to attack immediately, Thane explained. The Council wants to negotiate first, but they've made it clear that if you refuse their terms, they're prepared to use force. Alina studied the tactical information with growing alarm. Marcus, these are some of the same worlds we've rescued from the Vorth. They're turning against us after we saved them. Fear makes people do strange things, Marcus replied. They're grateful for what we've done, but they're also afraid of what we might do in the future. Tom Reed was running calculations on his engineering displays. If they're really planning to contain us, they'll need to cut off our supply lines and isolate our bases. That means any world still under Vorth attack will be left defenseless. Lisa Brooke highlighted several systems on the tactical map. There are at least 30 colonies in active danger zones. If we're restricted to human space, we can't reach them in time. Marcus stared at the strategic display, watching as friendly. Fleets moved into positions that would soon become hostile. The irony wasn't lost on him. Same tactical skills that had made the Guardian fleet so effective against the Vorth now allowed him to see exactly how the galaxy planned to trap them. How long do we have before they're in position? Marcus asked. 72 hours, Thane replied. The Council has scheduled a formal meeting for 3 days from now. They expect you to attend and agree to their terms. Marcus looked around the bridge at his friends and colleagues, Lena, who had wanted nothing more than to grow plants that could feed hungry worlds. Tom, who had spent his life building things that helped people. Lisa, who had just wanted to transport goods safely between communities. None of them had asked to become the galaxy's most feared military force. Thane, Marcus said finally.
Oh.
The Council that will attend their meeting. But make sure they understand one thing. We won't abandon the worlds that still need our protection. If they want to contain us, they'll have to offer something better than surrender.
Aus.
As the communication ended, Marcus realized that the peaceful people of Terra Nova had reached another crossroads. They had proven they could fight when necessary, but now they would have to decide whether they were willing to fight their former allies to continue protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy had created the very thing it now feared, a species that was too moral to be trusted with ultimate power and too powerful to be stopped by conventional means. The Galactic Council meeting was scheduled to take place in neutral space, aboard the ancient station called Unity Point. Marcus Vale arrived with a small diplomatic escort, leaving the Guardian fleet positioned at the edge of the Vorth territory, where 3 colonies were still under active attack. The timing wasn't coincidental. The galaxy's leaders wanted him to choose between saving those worlds and negotiating for humanity's future. As Marcus walked through the corridors of Unity Point, he could feel the tension from the various alien delegations. 16 different species had gathered to discuss the human problem, and their representatives watched him with mixtures of fear, respect, and and barely concealed hostility. Ambassador Thane met Marcus at the entrance to the main conference chamber. The Kaldan warrior looked tired, and his usual confident demeanor seemed strained. "The mood isn't good," Thane warned quietly. "Half of them want to negotiate restrictions on your fleet. The other half think you're too dangerous to be allowed to continue operating at all." "And which half do you belong to?" Marcus asked. Thane was quiet for a moment before answering. "I've seen what you can do in battle. I've also seen what you choose not to do. That might be the only thing saving this galaxy from a war it can't win." The conference chamber was enormous, with representatives from dozens of species arranged in a circle around a central speaking area. Marcus recognized many of the faces from the worlds the Guardian fleet had saved, but they avoided making eye contact now. Chancellor Mills of the Terran Federation stood to address the assembly. The Federation represented the oldest human colonies outside Terra Nova's sector, and they had always maintained strict military limitations on their member worlds. "We are here because humanity has become something unprecedented in galactic history," Chancellor Mills began. "In less than 1 year, they have transformed from peaceful farmers to the most powerful military force in known space. Their technology advances at a rate that defies explanation. Their tactical abilities surpass anything we have encountered." Counselor Ward of the Nexus Alliance rose from her seat. "The Guardian fleet has saved 17 worlds from the Vorth attacks. We acknowledge this debt, but their power continues to grow unchecked. They have technology that can repair itself, weapons that learn and adapt, ships that seem to think independently." Marcus listened as speaker after speaker rose to describe the threat that humanity supposedly represented. They spoke of his people as if they were a plague or a natural disaster, rather than the beings who had risked everything to protect them. Finally, Marcus was invited to speak. He walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at the assembled representatives. Many of these beings owed their lives to the Guardian fleet, but fear had overcome gratitude. "You're right to be afraid," Marcus said simply. "We frighten ourselves sometimes. 6 months ago, my biggest concern was whether the harvest would be good enough to send food aid to struggling colonies. Now, the first command, a fleet that can destroy entire star systems." The chamber fell silent. This wasn't the denial or justification they had expected. "But you're wrong about one thing," Marcus continued. "You think we became powerful because we wanted to conquer or control. The truth is simpler and more dangerous than that. We became powerful because we had to, and we stayed. Powerful because others still need our protection." Counselor Ward leaned forward in her seat. "What are you proposing, Commander Vale?" "While we've been having this meeting, 3 more colonies have sent distress calls. The Vorth are attacking the Kepler settlements, the mining stations near Proxima, and the agricultural world of New Eden. My fleet could reach all 3 locations within 18 hours. But instead, I'm here talking about surrender." Chancellor Mills spoke up. "The galaxy is prepared to take responsibility for defending those worlds. You don't need to be the only ones fighting this war." Marcus pulled out a datapad and activated. A holographic display that filled the center of the chamber showed the current positions of all galactic fleets, Vorth swarms, and threatened colonies. "Show me," Marcus said. "Show me which of your fleets can reach New Eden before the Vorth. Finish stripping its atmosphere. Which of your ships have weapons that can penetrate their newest shield configurations? Which of your species has developed countermeasures for their latest biological weapons?" The silence stretched on as the assembled leaders realized that they couldn't answer those questions. Despite all their fear of human power, they still needed the Guardian fleet to fight battles they couldn't win themselves. Elena Webb entered the chamber at that moment, her face grim with urgent news. She had stayed aboard the flagship to monitor Vorth movements. Her expression told Marcus that something had changed dramatically. Commander Elena said quietly as she approached, "We've found something. Source of the Vorth attacks. It's not what we thought." Marcus gestured for her to continue. Elena activated her own data display, showing biological scans and energy readings that filled the air above the conference table. "The Vorth aren't the real threat," Elena announced to the assembled galaxy leaders. "They're weapons. Biological. Weapons created by something else. Something that's been sleeping in the dead regions beyond the galactic rim." The chamber erupted in shocked conversations as Elena's data revealed the truth. Deep space scans had detected massive structures in the void between galaxies. Ancient installations that had been dormant for millions of years. The Vorth were just the first wave, designed to weaken and divide the galaxy's defenses. The enemy has been watching us, Elena continued, studying how we respond to the Vorth attacks, learning about our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses. Every time we fight the Vorth, we're being evaluated and cataloged. Omrid's voice came through. The communication system from the Guardian flagship. Commander, we're detecting new energy signatures from beyond the rim. Something big is powering up out there. Multiple something big. Marcus looked around the conference chamber at the faces of the galactic leaders. The fear was still there. But now it was mixed with the horrible realization that they had been arguing about the wrong thread entirely. Ambassador Thane stood slowly from his seat. How long do we have? Elena checked her readings. Based on the energy buildup patterns, maybe 6 months before the real invasion begins. The Vorth attacks will continue, but they're just keeping us busy while the main force prepares. Chancellor, Mills looked pale as he processed this information. What do you need from us, Commander Vale? Marcus felt the weight of the galaxy's future settling on his shoulders. The peaceful farmer who had once walked through grain fields was gone forever, replaced by something the galaxy needed but didn't want to acknowledge. I need you to stop being afraid of us and start being afraid of them, Marcus said, pointing toward the displays showing the ancient enemy beyond the rim. We're going to need every ship, every weapon, every mind in the galaxy working together. If we want to survive what's coming, and if we refuse, Counselor Ward asked. Marcus looked at her steadily. Then in 6 months, you'll discover what a real galactic threat looks like. And by then, it will be too late for any of us. Ended with a different kind of agreement than anyone had expected. The galaxy would not contain the Guardian fleet. Instead, they would expand it, adding ships and personnel from every species willing to fight for survival. The peaceful people of Terra Nova had become more than the galaxy's greatest threat. They had become its only hope, as Marcus returned. To his flagship, he thought about the irony of their situation. They had started as farmers who wanted nothing more than to grow food and help their neighbors. Now they were preparing to lead a galactic war against an enemy so ancient and powerful that it made the Vorth look like a minor annoyance. But perhaps that was what the galaxy needed most. Not warriors who loved battle, but protectors who fought only because others could not protect themselves.